Not the sports news on Omni Audio Africa with Romy Titus and Kevin McCallum.
Mic
Is it
check,
me
1,
you're
2,
looking
1, 2.
for? Lionel Richie. Who's singing that song? There's a great thing. Yeah. Hello?
Dell also does hello.
Yeah, and somebody was singing the song and Lionel Richie walks in. There's a very famous sort of meme. And walks in and says, "Hey, that's my song. You don't sing it." And slaps the guy. So, yeah, I think we've got Shaun Bartlett on the line.
We do. Shaun, welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. Can you sing?
No.
No, I'm sure you're a Lionel Richie fan. Hello? Is it me you're looking for? But, yeah.
I only say this when I answer the phone.
Well, yeah, maybe it's your ringtone. Shaun, coaching in South Africa, it's not the easiest job in the world, as you find out.
Yeah, it's, I think, anywhere in the world, to be honest. It's a stressful job, and it's obviously result-driven, If you don't get it, then you can have a 3-year contract, but you could be gone in 3 weeks.
With that said, though, do you think that the coaching merry-go-round, especially here at home, has quietened down? It's not as vicious a merry-go-round in terms of the speed at which coaches were hired and fired.
Maybe slightly, but it's still concerning. Obviously, if you look in the PSL, I think in this season alone, more than 11 coaches lost their job. So that already shows you that because it's also financially, for owners, it can be complicated. So they have to make decisions quickly. And also on the coaching side, if you don't have the proper players, then you can't get the results either.
But is slower, and I mean, I almost was chatting to everybody just saying, is it, yes, obviously we look at the person and yes, they're out of a job. But in terms of how long they've been given, you've basically been given enough rope to hang yourself, right? Where the club now isn't successful. If we take a look at a Gavin Hunt, and I'm not saying that in any way these coaches are not decorated, because they are, and they come with their own skill set. For me, the quickest firing happened to be Muhsin Etegral. But I mean, a Gavin Hunt, a Dan Malisela, a Pablo Franco, Martin, Eric Tinkler, for example, Siema, Mniti, Ramovic. It's not like in today and out tomorrow. We're talking about quite a while as head coaches of these clubs.
Yeah, again, I think when it comes to, again, results in fans, most of them have short-term memories, is what you've done last week. And I think you could have won, like Gavin won the league 3 times in a row with SuperSport, and still they made that decision to let him go. So it's a tough one always to swallow, bitter pill to swallow. And I think coaches they know the risk, to be honest, as far as going to certain clubs. You can have all the success, but they also know there's a time limit on how long you can be at a certain club.
I mean, is it a job you're just waiting to get fired in? That's what I think David
Well, that's
Moyes
why
said.
Most coaches will tell you live out of your suitcase.
Okay.
Because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's an ideal time.
There was actually quite a funny a joke that we made with Coach Gavin when he went to Chipper. They were like, just take a T-shirt, actually. Don't pack a bag, And we laughed about it. But I guess that is the reality of it. Shaun, do you think that coaches outgrow clubs? I also think the newer generation are coming in. You see it, it's no longer the generation of like a Brian Beloy, if I could draw that comparison, where the philosophy, and maybe, I don't know what it is, but it doesn't fit anymore, where this coach was a perfect match for this era and this time and this crop of players which he chose. And maybe he's just not a fit any longer. It just doesn't work.
Well, it's without a doubt, the football has changed, and like you've indicated, the coaching style has changed as well. So it's a lot more. Your coaching style becomes a lot more personal, I would say, with the current generation. I think I keep making this example with social media and our current generation. Everything is about instant gratification. So you post something and a minute later you could check how many likes you have. And there's a lot of these players nowadays that they don't want to, wait the turn or the time in order to get to the first team or you've got to manage them as far as the social media is concerned, not just the football side, but everything also. You've almost got to put your arm around them daily, to be honest, in order to get the best out of them. Gone are the days also of just shouting and swearing at players and thinking that you're going to get results that way. Players also have a lot more power these days as far as keeping you in a job or not keeping you in a job. So it's a very, very thin line, which most coaches obviously have to know.
Is there an ideal length of time? Is this as a coach, and you've coached and you've been a player, is there an ideal sort of length of time that you think a coach should be given at a club? Should it be a season? Should it be half a season to show what they can do?
Well, when you get in, especially when you go there as a new coach to the club, at least I think a season is good enough, because it takes a bit of time for players to understand you, the way you work, what you need to get across as far as the information is concerned, and to build relationships. I think that's the more important thing, is the relationship between the player and the coach. If that is at a good level, then you don't have to worry about getting results from the player as a footballer. I always believe you've got to deal with the human being first, and some coaches don't know how to do that, because at the end of the day, you come from home or wherever with personal issues, and I can't ask you to train if you're not 100% committed to what we're going to do. So there's a lot of things that you've got to consider in order to get the best results out of the player.
In your opinion, do assistant coaches not always make good head coaches? Because if I take a look at Sundowns, for example, and say, okay, Mangoba Mngiti's been there for so long, right, as part of the team with a Rulani Mokoena leading, that it almost becomes an obvious choice maybe that, okay, out goes Rulani and in comes Mangoba to lead the team. But it's not quite the same leadership, although you might think, but why not? You've been there for so long that you get the philosophy, the way the team runs, that it should be almost second nature for you to run it, to make it work, But they still go and look outside for a coach to come in, starting a whole new philosophy, a coach that comes with his own everythings. It's not always automatic, is it? But sometimes you think, how can it not be?
Yeah, but, the primary goal of an assistant coach is to assist the head coach with whatever philosophy or whatever ideas he's got. You might have your own thinking, you might have your own ideas, but your job is to assist. That's in the description itself, your assistant coach. But when it comes, like you, for instance, mentioned the fact when the head coach goes, then it's still going to take a bit of time. Then it's almost like you coming in as a new coach, even though you've been there for a while. To carry over and to implement your ideas, it will take a bit of time, because these guys have been stuck in one way as to what the head coach wanted them to do. Now it's going to take a bit of time, and I think that's sometimes what clubs forget as well. It's not just automatic because you've been there for years that you understand everything that's going on. Players need to adapt to a different head coach now in order to get results, and that also takes time.
You think about, Alex Ferguson. So he had Brian Kidd, Steve McLaren, Mike Phelan, and Carlos Queiroz, who was the Bafana coach. And all those guys, and apparently he wouldn't take training as such, he would just oversee it. But those guys would do the detailed work, like the tactics and the training. Who was the other one? Benny McCarthy. So they would take aspects and he would just overlook it and make sure it all worked and brought it together. So it's what Jake White did with the Springboks to an extent. You build a team, and that's what Rassie Russell do. You build a team that essentially you can be lazy and go, hey, yeah, I'm the head coach. If they lose, yeah, that's fault. No, just that's a joke. But if they win, then it's a group effort, and that's what you need. You need to build a team that gives you continuity from one coach to the next. That continuity is obviously the important thing.
That's the big difference between here and Europe. In Europe, and similar was with me when I was at Charlton, the manager was never involved in training. We had a coach that was doing the daily trainings with us. So that relationship was always better than having the one with the manager, because he wasn't with the players on a daily basis. Yeah. So he would come 2 or 3 days before the match, and then he's 11, he'll take aside and start doing tactical stuff. But on a daily basis, the assistant coach is the one that's doing all the training. I was very similar in my role with Kaiser Chiefs when Middendorp was there. He would tell me what to do in training, how to, what information he wants across, and I would do the trainings. And sometimes there's a saying in Europe and especially England, you're only as good as your number two. And Ferguson for years always made sure he picked the best sort of coaches to do his trainings, because that's the important thing, the foundation that you lay for getting results on match day.
Shaun, I always feel some type of way because today everyone has a camera, right? And everybody poses as a journalist. Yet I had to go to journalism school. So I always get very, very annoyed by it, right?
Yeah.
I guess coaching is probably the same. And no one poses to be doctors or dentists, So why pose as a journalist? Anyway, that's my gripe. But for coaching, is it the same where CAF has come in, enforced rules to say, look, you've got to have your CAF A license now to sit on benches when it is AFCON, for example. But sometimes also you find a really gifted coach where it just comes naturally, and they've been head of a coach perhaps in the development sides or however it is, but you find that raw talent and someone that just has the knack. Do you think that there is still space for that person, that caliber of coach? And do you think it is necessary for CAF to enforce some type of law to say, look, you're going to have to study the game in some shape or form for you to call yourself a coach?
Yeah, I think it's always good to educate yourself. I think to a certain degree, like you've indicated, also like playing, you'll have that natural ability, but that ability will be tested when the tough times come, and then suddenly you don't know what to do. And I think very similar with coaching. If you haven't experienced, if you haven't been taught what to do in difficult times, then obviously you're going to crumble and fall apart. And I think that's the sort of criteria why they want coaches to educate themselves and to get the proper coaching badges, is to understand the emotion involved, the different scenarios you might encounter. The same with training. You train every day scenarios that might happen in a game, and that's why it's called practice. And the same, I think, goes for coaching. When it comes to coaching, and that's maybe true of the modern day coaches. A lot of them haven't necessarily played the game. So it's a little bit difficult to understand what the player is going through if you haven't been in that situation yourself. I'm not saying it's not a good thing, but it gives you a slight advantage, I would say, if you've been in situations like that before and understanding the player's needs and emotions in that particular instance or whatever scenario they're in. Ironically, I got a text this morning from a former player of mine who's a coach and asked me, Coach, how do I get the confidence back on the players, How do I put a smile back on the players' faces? We're going through tough times. You used to do it with us, and I always used to enjoy it because I used to get that second wind out of where, I don't know, but you gave us that confidence in order to go and play again. And it's small things like that, obviously, that makes you feel appreciated, but also understanding that the players take note of actually what you're doing around them, which is great.
I guess a case in point, for you would be having been in all sides and aspects of the game, from player all the way to coach. And so perhaps that's where you get that from. But I mean, getting your badges doesn't also necessarily mean that you're favored and you're going to be hired, because I know a lot of coaches having spent the time and the money to get their CAF A.
It's not about the CV all
and
the
they're
time,
sitting, waiting, hoping, looking for employment.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking to one at the moment, isn't it?
Correct.
I'm just going to quickly, before we let you go, Charlton Athletic, down, and obviously they've dropped from the Premiership and they're playing down in League One, but they're fourth and looking in good nick. I think they just beat Wigan 2-1 last week, or the week before that. Do you follow them still? Are you still a bit of a fan?
Yeah. Was definitely. Obviously, Mark Fish and myself had the privilege in October. We were flown over to come and visit the club and, be appreciated by the fans. We got to step onto the field and, get a round of applause from the fans for what we did for the club. And we attended the game. And even that game, they played the top of the league at the time, and they went through a really bad spell. And, it's all about confidence. Even the directors at the time didn't feel like they were going to win, but we just kept speaking positive, because if you don't believe as a director you can win, what are your players going to think? So again, it's all about money. Unfortunately, in England at the moment, if you don't have the money, you can't get to the highest level, which is Premier League. And I think they've had quite a few owners over the last few years, but things seems to be looking up, and I'm hoping they can make at least, playoffs and get promotion to the championship again. Because the structures they have is unbelievable. For a League One team, they shouldn't be there with the facilities and the stadium and the fans, everything else combined. It's a great club.
Coach, good luck with the employment.
Thank you, Shaun.
Thanks. Thank you very much, guys.
Cheerio.
It was great. It was just, Shaun Bartlett, he scored a goal for Charlton Athletic. It was a volley that he took in the air. That's one of the best goals I've ever seen. I don't know if it was right foot or left foot, but he was a hell of a player, and I think he should be a hell of a coach.
He
Trust
is
him.
a hell of a coach.
Trust him.
And remember what
Trust
I told
coaches.
you, he said, I'm not just here about to take any job.
Yeah.
Values need to align, and I need to buy into
Exactly that.
the identity of a team in order to be the best coach.
Find the heart, find the soul. And the way he talks about his players, they're children to him. And I've been at several parties with Dan Nichols, throw these big parties on the weekend. We used to watch sport together. And not big parties, like, just sitting
big
over a braai.
parties.
But, Shaun and I have spoken a couple of times just about sport and
Please
football.
invite me to the big party.
He's an incredibly kind and generous man.
Gem.
Absolute gem. And generous with his time. Coming after the break, hopefully we've got a gem coming on the line right after the Oscar music that Ndu's playing. What have I done?
Nothing.
I didn't swear. Why are you knocking? Oh, is that seconds out round number 2?
Yes.
Daniel Hirsch coming up after the break, and we're going to fill up our swear jar, I think.
Not the sports news on Omni Audio Dance Africa.